Heidi ho, everyone. Welcome to Knowledge or Nonsense. My name is Sharon Combs, and I am joined by Mr.
Wayne Perkins. Hey, happy Saturday there.
Happy Saturday. It is. Can you believe it's May already?
I cannot. Time is flying by.
It is. It is. I hope that you are celebrating your mothers, whether you are one, you have one, you had one, or you simply know one. Please celebrate the achievements, celebrate the, all night cryings, the sicknesses, the illnesses, the encouragement, the coach, everything that you've been and have received through somebody called mom. Just go ahead and be sure to celebrate that this week. I hope you have a really, really good Mother's Day. LaWayne, today we get to talk about groupthink.
Yeah.
We've had some comments. I've had some private messages like, what is groupthink?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it's a thing, y'all. It is a thing. Were you familiar with groupthink, LaWayne? Have you seen it in action?
I've seen it in action. Didn't know on what banner it fell under, but it's real. I now understand some of the conditions that create an environment groupthink, some of the outcome and consequences for said conditions. So it's embedded in many institutions that we abide by, whether voluntarily or involuntarily.
Right. Listen, when I think of groupthink, two things come to mind. One old and one more recent. But the first one is the organization called Blockbuster.
Mm-hmm.
And like somewhere, somebody knew, if we don't switch, if we don't bring in some new thought, creative thought, if we don't challenge this perspective of how things are, it's not going to be well for the company. And I think of January 6th, when the people went to the Capitol. Some say stormed, some say visited, some say it's ours because we paid them, so we had a right to be there. Many say different things, but again, someone had to have a train of thought that was what the movies would say divergent, that was a little different from the established norm. And so just some of the dangers of groupthink. But I look forward to getting into it with our guest today. We have Derek Jones on. He, always a favorite, brings just such talented. Yes, talented. We have Chester Nichols on. D1 coach, wisdom just dropping like a whale.
Brilliant.
And we have a new guest with us, Dr. Rashawn Ray. And
he's
I've heard really good things about him. I'm excited to be able to hear his take on it too. So
indeed. Look, I'm excited. And a quick disclaimer. Dr. Ray's a beast. I've seen some of his work. This can easily be a 2-hour episode, easily. So for our viewers, get patient, get ready to learn and engage, and come have some fun with us today on Knowledge or Nonsense.
All right, guys, we're about to get it started. You know what to do. Share this video, share it on your platforms, follow us. If you have a question that you want to say or a comment and you're not quite sure you want to put it inside of the comment, the visible ones, you can text that to 214-717-5921. Our producers will take care of it. We'll get it up on the screen and we will get a response. But now I'm going to hush up. Take this time to share your videos. When we come back, we'll have a screen full of guests and LaWayne will go.
Go time. It's go time. Let's do it.
Hello, welcome to Knowledge and Nonsense. It's such a pleasure to have you all. I'm excited about this conversation. That's what Knowledge and Nonsense is about: vetting processes, patterns, and perspectives that really govern day-to-day action, create our norms, our mores, just they really kind of govern why we do and how we do what we do, but people don't always check into it, if I can say it in a simple way. And so today we have Chester Nichols with us, Southern Illinois University. How you doing, Mr. Nichols?
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Good. We're so glad to have you. We have Mr. Derek Jones with us, repeat guest.
All right, y'all.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you all?
I am doing wonderful, man. Just love what you're doing for the community, for the healthcare community.
Thank
for
you.
the community. Please keep doing what you're doing. You're such an impactful individual. And we
Thank
have
you.
with us Dr. Rashawn Ray. Welcome to Knowledge and Nonsense.
Hey, thank you all so much for having me. I look forward to this important conversation.
Yes. All right,
Yeah.
so without further ado, Luane.
Listen. When we gentlemen, ladies, welcome to Knowledge and Nonsense. When you heard the term groupthink, Derek, what resonated? What came to mind?
Well, I think about how one person or a group of individuals or members' decisions can block out the true thought and the true expression of a group. If you have a culture that has been established and you have one leading that particular group, members can follow suit, and it will control the true overall thoughts and ideals that should be expressed versus what's currently being visible.
Chester, we were talking behind the scenes, and when I first envisioned groupthink, I remember this old caricature of a group of men in a boardroom. I call them yes men, but in the bubble, who agrees? Everybody has a hand up, but you see their thought process. This is ridiculous. I can't believe he's suggesting this idea. Everyone's saying yes. Where does groupthink come from? Have you experienced it?
You know what? Because a lot of time it's one, like you're talking about. It's one of those safe things. And when I say safe, just because you get in a group, you're less likely to make a bad decision. But sometimes you can make a worse decision than you can individually. So I think it's dangerous. I think it puts people at risk. It puts your workers at risk, the people you're serving at risk. And then more importantly, it can put your families at risk. Because at the end of the day, every decision that you make, it comes back home.
Dr. Ray, educate us. What's the psychology behind groupthink? Where did this? Is it a phenom? Is it happenstance? Where did it come from?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's definitely legit. I mean, they just hit the nail on the head. I mean, when we think about groupthink, of course, it's the ideology that by people employing a groupthink mentality that it actually stymies or discourages creativity and individual responsibility. So on one hand, it can definitely be safe. And we can think about the importance of that, say, for children who are growing up. The way that I think about it as a sociologist specializing in social psychology is that we could think about group dynamics and the role of the environment, the structural environment, the built environment, and the social environment. Think about it like this. People always talk about crabs in a barrel. People act like crabs in a barrel. They start fighting with each other. They start bickering. They start behaving similarly. But no one ever thinks that the barrel is not the crab's natural habitat. No one ever thinks to take them out of the barrel. And I heard Steve Harvey say something about related to this about fleas. Fleas are very small. They're pesky to us, but they are one of the creatures that can jump the highest of any creatures relative to its size. But if you put a flea in a jar, the flea will keep trying to jump out of the jar. They will keep, because they can jump astronomically higher than that jar. But eventually that flea is going to get tired of hitting its head on the top of the jar. And then guess what? When that flea has babies, those babies learn through a groupthink mentality to only jump as high as the top of the jar to not hit the top of the head. And so I think when we think about this, and we of course can think about this in the context of Black and brown communities, in the context of low income communities, whether people are living in places in neighborhoods in St. Louis, neighborhoods in Memphis or Washington, D.C. and what have you, Chicago. And we could think about how a groupthink mentality can actually stymie creativity, but rarely do we talk about the structural environment that placed those people in that groupthink mentality.
Relevant, extremely relevant.
Yes.
There's a psychologist out of Yale University, Ivan Janis, and he's done a lot of work over the structure of groupthink. I want to read some of the factors. He said all groupthink conditions have in common. He said one that creates groupthink. He said high group cohesiveness, structural faults such as installation of a group or lack of impartial leadership, and situational context such as highly stressful external threats. So what Dr. Ray just said fits within that model as to why groupthink becomes a foundational model. Sharon, what are your thoughts? You on mute, Sharon?
Thank you for letting me know. My thoughts immediately were, I always think why? Why? Well, why, if you know something, do you go against what you know? I'm big on cognitive dissonance. But when Dr. Ray was talking, the thing that hit me the most was, and communities of color or communities that are not around water, how they won't teach their children to swim. Like it's A, it wasn't the natural habitat. And then B, being protective, or just you model what you learn with the fleas. And so now no one's going into the water, certain people don't do this. And I think that's how groupthink can get passed down. And I just think it's such a limiting concept. Unity is beautiful, but groupthink is such a limiting concept. I hope I answered your question, but those are the two things that immediately hit me, like just real-time things that are common, that are misconceptions, are turned into biases or stereotypes, actually reflect a part of groupthink, because you're modeling what the group is doing. You're modeling what others around you are doing, even if you have a thought that is not necessarily lined up with that. And then too, I also think, okay, you asked me, I'm telling you. I also think things like with gangs, or like quote unquote the mob, just different things of that nature, where people, you don't want to say something outside of the quote way, because you don't want that social shame, or to be ostracized, or people to look at you, or rejection, like all of those things. But we wouldn't have any innovation, any technology, we wouldn't be what we are right now if everybody just stayed in this block, one block. So I think it's crazy.
But you know what? If you start to dissect, and I hear exactly what you guys are talking about. If you start to dissect the characteristics of it, like we're all saying conform, and then we get in these big groups. There's times we avoid conflict when we should be confronting. Yeah, but we won't, because the whole thing is to like you want to get cohesiveness. I guess, for lack of better words. And I'll just give you an example, because I don't like spouting out stuff without giving an example. Like our goal, if we're going in the locker room, our goal is to be a team, be connected, be the most excited to play, be the best at doing your job. And I think that kind of covers the realm of why you have groupthink. You were talking about the why. That would be the why right there, to get everyone on the same page. No, we're going to agree to disagree, but what are we looking to take out of it?
That's a positive, right? We I know in business, you can be at some of these board meetings, and when you see the groupthink mindset creep in, my mind will automatically go to, okay, there's going to be an incomplete survey of alternatives. No one's going to step outside of the norm and challenge what's going on, because we may have a charismatic leader, someone who can look real good in the moment and will get us to the goal. Look, they'll get us to the goal. There's gonna be a lot of casualties. There's gonna be a lot of pain. It's gonna be Dr. Ray. I see you shaking your head. What do you got for me?
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, the casualties are so key. As we continue this symbolism here that's so relevant and realistic. I heard a queer woman pastor, talk about how she's one of the first people to do what she's doing at Duke University and in the area in North Carolina. And everyone's cheering at this conference that I was at the DeWitt Proctor conference. And she says, this is great. She said, I appreciate why people are applauding. She said, but as we break these glass ceilings, nobody pays attention to how much we get cut and how difficult it is for us to heal. And it was such like a powerful statement, because part of what we're talking about when we talk about conformity, that's real. I mean, look, our education system socializes kids to conform, socializes us to get comfortable with going to work from 7 to 3, from 8 to 5, from 9 to 6, gets us comfortable with the salary that everyone else is getting. And again, those aren't always bad things, right? I mean, but the problem is that not only do we have a broader group think socialization process, because that's really where it comes from. Like, we have to talk about the source of that. It's a socialization process to maintain the status quo. It is not to disrupt things as they are. And as we heard, that there are consequences to going to the brain. That is a big part of it. Those consequences are big time. Now, as people are oftentimes breaking the grain, breaking the mold, something new comes about. And then, of course, people start trying to replicate that. We see that in a lot of different fields, whether that be right now, what's going on with, with how we're thinking about technology, whether that be NFT, crypto, and that sort of thing. But part of a lot of where that came from were computer scientists and engineers aiming to be innovative in a laboratory environment, giving people the opportunities to have a new platform, a new example. And so I think as we think about this groupthink mentality, the other thing we have to realize is that all of us are socialized in a similar environment. There are just more or less consequences to the socialization process. And one of the bottom lines, and people said this earlier, one of the bottom lines is oftentimes when we have children or when we are around younger people, we want to protect them, make sure that they're safe. And that is a conundrum. It is oftentimes an inherent contradiction between keeping young people safe and then also allowing them to be innovative. Because innovation oftentimes leads to consequences. And so we have to kind of think about that in its totality and think about, okay, what are the ultimate goals that we are going for here and ensuring that we can position our children to be successful as they go forth.
Powerful.
Yeah. And just to piggyback off that, and when Dr. Ray brought up the NFTs and the crypto, so I found myself lost at a point, like, wait a minute, what is NFTs? What is this? What is that? And because of just the ideal of groupthink, I had a fear of being left out. So I find myself investing and buying into something that I have no idea about. I really, truly don't understand. But I don't want to wake up one day and say, hey, everyone is doing this and I'm left out. I'm on the sideline. So it's
better than most, though, brother.
Right.
Be a little too modest here.
Right.
When I look at groupthink, I try to put things, look at either the opposite or the parallel. And I think groupthink, then I think dissonance, right? And I said, let's consider groupthinks on a higher scale. Imagine early America's 1500s, the politics of groupthink, right? Which categorize people in certain factors, based on race, some on religion, some on gender. And imagine if we didn't have dissonance to begin to challenge and break those norms. Where will we be right now? A dissident person that comes to mind automatically, Reverend Martin Luther King. All of those early civil rights activists, they refused to go to follow the political norm, sometimes in their region, and neighborhood, or country. And when you mention some of these companies, Uber, was a disruptor, also a dissident from the taxi and cab model. So it's always, in my opinion, to look at different scales of the conversation. To bring it down to our household to see how it can impact our own, but also on a larger scale. Chester, we were talking before we got on, and one article I read about groupthink was the invasion of Iraq, right? It was no one at home with a loud enough voice say, hey, President Bush, this is not a good idea. After 9/11, in my community, I can tell you, everyone thought the same thing. You are guilty. And on the other side of that poster, you are guilty, it was a common image of who did it. And we didn't any facts or very little evidence. So groupthink can be very, very harmful. Chester, what do you say?
It's funny that you say that. Probably 2, maybe 3 days ago, I'm watching TV, and I'm not sure if you guys remember the Challenger, the space shuttle disaster. This was like in the mid 80s. Yeah. And they were meeting about it. And I grew up in Florida, probably about an hour and a half from Cape Canaveral. And they go in those meetings, and they're meeting, and they didn't even call it groupthink back then, but knowing that I was coming on, and the way they expressed those details, they said, we got faulty parts. We don't know if we should send this shuttle. And obviously egos and pride got involved. They didn't feel like a couple of little small parts was necessary to fix. As a result of that, 7 lives were lost. Normally that's a big deal. Because like I said, we lead with purpose or we lead with power. And when When you're not leading with purpose, these are the results that you get. Because you go into groupthink, again, everybody needs to leave out of there with one message. And you can't have pride when you're doing that.
Wow. You know, you mentioned, and unfortunately, we have to mention some of the most known and vivid outcomes of groupthink. Chernobyl. That was
Chernobyl. I was going to say Chernobyl.
Experts have determined, the facts were presented, but once again, yes men and women who are not challenging leadership. I think they call it truth to power. Not bold enough to say, hey, wait a minute, this is look at the outcome here. And the same thing happens, Derek, in our organizations.
Yes.
We have decision makers making decisions on behalf of all, but not all don't have the input.
Correct.
So
totally agree. Yep.
Vital.
It's almost like it's a blindness to what's going on. I mean, you see it, but you really don't want to see it.
So I have a question. And let us hit this question, and then we'll take a short commercial break after we really delve into this. So, would groupthink really be peer pressure for adults?
Hey, Sharon, I think peer pressure is peer pressure for adults. But I think so. Look, we mentioned peer pressure, right? I want to take it to a corporate level, right?
Let's do it.
We have decisions that we know it may sound good on the surface, and the person dropping the decisions the outcome is not going to benefit many. But because you have different department leaders or different stakeholders giving their feedback, you, as my grandmother would say, you go along to get along, without pushing back, without explaining the benefit, because you want to avoid conflict. And in that moment of avoiding conflict, you're creating a disaster, right? You're in some cases there, you're supposed to be the state, you're supposed to be the guardian, the one saying, wait a minute, I'm gonna take this thing for the team. What say you? So I think it is peer pressure for adults. That's a great way of looking at it.
And as I stated earlier, I think it's like a blindness to the negative outcomes. We won't think it all the way through. And then when it does happen, I mean, you can't take it back once you've made a decision when it affects so many people involved.
I'm going to push back on that. But first, Dr. Ray, it looks like you had something you were about to weigh in on. I'm pushing back on you, Chester.
I was just going to speak to this point. The consequences, and Chester's really been bringing this up, LaWayne as well, like the consequences to bucking the system, the consequences to going against the groupthink are serious. One of the big ones deals with stigma. So when we start talking about peer networks, whether we're 15 or whether we are 50, those consequences are real. And here it goes. Really what we're talking about is when you buck the system, you oftentimes become perceived as deviant. It's perceived that your behavior is deviant. Deviant doesn't always mean illegal activity. It actually means going against the socialized grain that exists. It means going against groupthink. Now, of course, that's how we get innovation, but we have to kind of break down these different typologies of deviance. First, we have conformists. That's part of what we're talking about with groupthink. People who represent the comparison group, people who are trying to obtain goals of society through acceptable means, right? The acceptable going to school, doing what you're supposed to do. And of course, those are things that I think we want for everyone to be able to do, but doing it the same way. Okay, you go work at your job, you wear the same thing that other people do, you learn the lingo, the lingo, language. And then there are other people who are innovators. Innovators share the goals of society with conformists, but they oftentimes employ illegitimate means. And again, illegitimate doesn't always mean illegal. It just means different. And going through that process, these individuals are perceived oftentimes to be deviant because they're creating something new. Think about it. Uber and Lyft, viewed by the taxi industry as deviant. Woo! Viewed as deviant by Blockbuster and people who if you all were like me, like going into the movie store, like picking up the VHS tape and that in the back, like viewed as deviant. And so now all of a sudden, those things are not viewed as deviant. They are viewed as part of the norm. And if you're not doing that, like if you're traveling somewhere, you I'm going to hop in a taxi. People are like, why are you hopping in a taxi? Why are you not going to do Uber? All of a sudden, see that innovation comes out. Now, again, we have to think about that. Oftentimes, the stigma is less impactful for people who have the social, economic, and cultural resources to handle the blowback. See,
oh man, you better drop the mic.
Let's talk about the owners of Uber and Lyft. Let's talk about social media companies. These individuals had resources. They were wealthy. Oftentimes they were highly educated or had highly educated parents. And oftentimes they were more likely to be men and they were more likely to be white. So we have to be clear about the setup that allows for the innovation. And then the people who are being really innovative, you all know, like I know, I see innovation in the hood every single day. That I'm like,
every day,
nobody could do that. But innovation is still stymied in that jar. It is still in that barrel. The question is how do we get that innovation out to allow for them to become the next Mark Zuckerberg, to allow for them to become the next Elon Musk, because those individuals were perceived as deviant at first as well. And now they are the norm as society is catching up to them.
Mic drop.
Man.
yes,
Mic drop. Listen, I know everybody has something they want to say after that, but I just need to take it in. So we're definitely going to pay a sponsor right now. And yes, that's all I have for that. We'll be right back. 60 seconds.
Those in the know SIPS Consults. SIPS Consults is hiring. Confident, competent, and consistent. Starting as a consultant and a volunteer, SIPS has grown into a dynamic group of stellar sterile processing professionals, offering excellent benefits, 401k, and consultant in training program. We are hiring certified technicians, leads, supervisors, interim managers, educators, coordinators. Apply at recruiting@sipsconsults.com or dial 1-866-615-7977.
Hey, we're back, you guys. This is Knowledge and Nonsense here with Dr. Ray, Derek Jones, Chester Nichols, LaWayne Perkins, and myself, Sharon Combs. And we're talking about groupthink and all of its applications. And man, Dr. Ray, you just dropped something there when you said the innovation and how it's perceived as deviant, almost based on like resources of where it comes from. And you're right. What was deviant at first is now the standard to which so many aspire to be. But can we just hold there for a minute? Because we're coming out of a pandemic. And I feel like we need to come off the skeleton, put some meat on the bones here, right here. We're coming out of a pandemic. More people have started businesses out of necessity, out of innovation, out of resilience. Some of that, whether you call it shoestring budget or whether you call it Jimmy Regan, whatever you may term it, people have made it happen with innovation and just being able to create different things. Now, they may not have those resources. They may not be of the demographics of which you just so described that made it easier for deviant things to be more acceptable. Like, can we just hold for a moment for those individuals? Because in my warm market alone, people have started businesses and they're doing good, but it is different. And they are bucking up against, not even intentionally, but what people are like, no, this is the system and we're going back to this. And I don't know why we're going back to that, because it's actually working and educating more people, this new business. So I rambled there, but I'm hitting y'all with a question for those individuals who may not be in those demographics, may not have those current resources, that where it really may be perceived as a negative or adverse what they're doing. Can we just give them some tips? LaWayne, you're smiling. I'll let you go first.
Hey, look, you know what the reason I'm smiling, is one, you got a good question, and Dr. Ray's explanation, it brought so much mental joy, right? It brought mental joy. That's what I'm gonna ride with. But early innovators in poor communities, this is what I think about. The lottery system. I grew up, it was no lottery system. It was my elders saying, go put these numbers in. Eventually that process got jacked. Now we have a lottery system, right? Early innovators, from the inventors who had patents, folks have patents that were never realized because they didn't have the resources to protect their stuff, right? So I think dissidents, being creative, even in the face of adversity, and many folks is in our DNA. This becomes the norm. This isn't something, we said, look at all this creativity in poor communities. This is the norm. We wake up seeing greatness, but sometimes we don't identify it as greatness because you see it every day, right? But good point, Sharon. I think this pandemic it shook up everyone, because whether you were stuck in that groupthink mode, you had to turn on that survival switch. And for some, again, they were really trying to survive. For others, it was the norm. We spoke about this many shows ago. You know, I'm like, hey, I'm always hungry on Thursday. Why you crying? You know?
Yeah, I have so many thoughts on that, but so yeah, deviant or disruptors for change. It goes back to language. You guys know I'm always a fan of master language. Get to know the room, get to know the rules of engagement for the places you are walking into. But I think about certain podcasts. It was considered deviant when it was started by one individual who did not have some of the resources. As a matter of fact, just the African American male who did not have resources, but he had the heart and he kept doing it. So magazine, podcast, and everything within healthcare. And then someone else with resources, well, white male, just put it like that, and just literally modeled that entire concept, and it just blew up. And they're like, this is the first ever. This is the first. And I'm like,
right. You know what's amazing?
Not the first at all.
Yeah, and I want you to jump in here, Chester. Here's what's amazing, right? Because resources don't only necessarily mean financial resources. Resources can sometimes mean your ability to walk into an environment and be welcome, to be heard, to be seen, right? How much greatness can be seen? We just had our first Supreme Court African-American woman nominated to the bench. Great. Her resume is outstanding. The case she sat on, they said she's one of the most brilliant minds, judicial minds ever. Not now, but ever. But she was unseen. You know, she's not new. She's always been there. You know. So, Chester, what are your thoughts?
Man, and just to go back, I'm not sure who made the point earlier, but just that outside of the box thinking, like it reduces that decision-making stress. Because if you're going to follow the pack, like you're only going to get so far, because now people are going to catch up to that trend and now they're on something else. We evolve. I think you got to embrace feedback. And as you're getting that feedback, you got to know who you are. And everything starts with self-awareness. Because if the parts ain't right, the whole can't be right. Okay? The parts got to make the whole. I don't know if I answered your question, and I'm trying to dial it in what I do on a daily basis, but it's still relative to what we're talking about.
Understood.
Yeah. I mean, Chester, look, y'all are nailing it. The way that I think about it is oftentimes people are conforming to survive.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
They're conforming to survive. They don't want to step outside of that comfort zone because there could be consequences for themselves and others. People are oftentimes innovating to thrive. That's a different social process, right? People are conforming to survive. They are innovating to thrive. When people get tired of being in that barrel, when people get tired of being in that jar, they start thinking, how can I innovate? And that innovation is oftentimes perceived as deviant and stigmatizing as they go through that process. Kind of think about the metamorphosis that it takes for a diamond to be created. Think about how much pressure it takes for a rose to pop out of concrete. Kind of think about what does it mean to go through that process, and then you become tokenized, right? It's like then all of a sudden, now that you have innovated, they're like, oh yeah, you're the one that made it. Oftentimes, the way I think about it from a structural standpoint, an environmental standpoint, is that the process that happens, that metamorphosis, particularly for Black low-income communities, is what I call the Black brain drain. See, for many of us to be successful, we had to leave the communities where we were, not because we wanted to, but because the resources we needed weren't necessarily there. The opportunities that we needed to actualize our greatness was not there. And bringing up Black small businesses is such an important point because, see, in 2020, a Stanford University showed that 41% of Black small businesses closed. 41%. In 2021, essentially that same number popped back up again as new businesses, right? Now we celebrate that, but here goes the point. That new 41% that happened in 2021, those were pretty much different businesses from the ones in 2020. The question I always have is, how can we sustain both? How could we not only have the ones in 2020 stay around and also allow the ones in 2021 to sustain themselves? You ask a great question. What does it look like for people trying to figure this out? A few things that I'll say. First thing, find 5 models of success at different life stages, at different career stages. Don't just look at the people that's uber successful now. Look at it along the continuum. I typically think about it in 5-year increments. If I go out 20, 25 years from my current age, what does success look like 5 years from now? What does success look like 10 years, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, 25 years from now? Part of doing that means you identify a different person. You also identify people that you can relate with more. And then you literally backtrack their careers and their life and you do what they did. So for example, if 3 of the 5 models you identified got a certificate at a particular university or a particular trade school, or they attended a particular school to get a master's degree, well, guess what? That's where you better be going. You might not be able to know what 10 years look like, but you know what the next 2 to 3 should look like. Right. The other thing is, don't be afraid of what pops in your mind. See, the innovation and greatness comes from what's happening in our brain. It's when we in the shower. It's when we go into sleep at night. It's when we wake up in the morning. A lot of us, through socialization, through conformity, we shy away from that. Instead, you want to write that down. You want to actualize that moment, and then you want to figure out how to do that. And finally, you definitely want to have, and Chester said this, you want to have people that's going to give you critical feedback. I create what I call the council. I have a professional council and a personal council, 5 people in each, so that then there are no tiebreakers. And essentially what happens here is I ask them critical questions about my life. I ask them, am I going where I need to go? And then here goes the point, particularly the personal council. These are people that love me, whether I was a PhD or whether or not I was picking up the trash outside my house, which, mind you, can be a really good career. Don't like, I'm not knocking that for any reasons, but making the relative point that those people will love me regardless of what I do. Find those people, and then find 5 people that when you tell them an idea, they say, that's a good idea. But you know what would really make this dope is if you did that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't want people that's like, oh, Derek, I don't know, man. Like, you know, start up this business, man. You trying to get all these vans, these trucks, you trying to have these houses. No, you need people that's like, man, that's dope. What if you took it just in different parts of St. Louis? What if you across the state of Missouri? What if you think down the road you go into different states? Those are the people that get in your council, and you create this, and then guess what? You put together a plan and you follow the plan every day. You don't veer from it. It means every day you're going to have a difficult day. Some weeks you're going to have difficult weeks. Sometimes you're going to have difficult months and years, but you follow the pathway because eventually you'll be that rose that pops up from the concrete.
Well said. Well said.
Yes.
Hey, you know that there's a song, I don't know the whole hook, but he didn't understand the assignment, follow the assignment, right? You got to follow the assignment. You know, Jan, we speak, and Dr. Ray, we spoke some time ago. You look at like our first Black president, right? And there was so much hoo-ha around the country. Hey, and I was extreme. I'm still excited. You know, I remember the moment. I was in DC. But second term, we didn't follow up. We didn't follow the assignment. We didn't go back to the polls. We didn't take care of the midterm elections. You know, I look at Montgomery bus boycott. Yeah, we boycotted, right? But after the boycott, we didn't follow the assignment. We put so many independent Black-owned businesses out of business because we didn't follow the assignment. So that circle, that council, that circle of care and expertise, that's a major gem. I hope our listeners take note. Major gem.
Yeah. You know, just all of the things. One of the things that's popping up right now is it's like cherry pickings. The innovation that does happen in our community. And then you said that about the businesses closing and then others coming up. And then I know things just that I've watched happen over the span of my career. Just, it's like cherry pickings. And what is innovation and working, somewhere there's still the desire to conform to a norm that may not be ours. Just try with me. I feel y'all see y'all now and y'all try. And then that allows cherry pickings from our communities. Whatever, man. We're doing it on knowledge and nonsense. That allows the hands to come over and cherry pick whatever that community is. But I'm talking about the brown communities right now. And then they just come cherry pick because somewhere we've been groomed to think it's a limited amount of opportunities, but it's not. I can remember feeling like, oh, well, I have to play basketball. And then one of my colleagues, a friend of mine, he's like, no, hey, look, we're going to buy this mall and do such and such. And I was like, what? What you mean? You're going to buy the whole mall? You're not just going to get a job in the mall? You know, and it just, it blew my brain. But something in me had enough foresight to say, I didn't say what to him. I said, well, I think you can do it. Because I had no idea he could do it. I ain't never, nobody had ever told me they were going to buy them all before, you know? I'm in my 88 Escort, stick shifts, you know, wonder why my air conditioning doesn't work. He was like, hey, let's go buy this mall. And he was serious about it. And I said, no, I think you can do it. He said, you think we can? I said, I think you can do it. I sure do. Yeah, I'm looking at the drawings like I know. But that allows, back to the cherry pickings. It allows with ease cherry pickings because something in us is still attempting to conform and not be deviant. And I believe that's in the conditioning of the public schools and just the way systems have set us up. Indeed. And again, I'm talking about the brown and black community right now, but that also happens with women. That happens with other marginalized communities. But dang, and that also is how the cherry pickers play the ones being picked against one another because something in you feels like based on, I'm done. I said I wasn't going to talk a lot. Go ahead, guys.
Well, hey, Derek. I remember when I was in pursuit to purchase my first house. My first house. And look, I grew up in a housing tenement, aka project. Yeah. I remember elders in my environment saying, you just want to be better than everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
Why do you want to leave? This is your home.
Oh, you're muted. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. He got so passionate. This is a passionate conversation, though. But I hope people listening run with this conversation and keep doing your thing. Go ahead, Luane. I still can't hear you, man. We can't hear you.
What I will say to that though is beautiful. And Dr. Ray, my brother, they're great friends, and he was one of the first in my family to break through the groupthink of our community. And we were taught to just get a job, get with a company, work for 40 years, don't pursue higher education and things like that. And my brother and I finally broke through, but it was challenging because we didn't have the resources or the people to guide us to say, hey, I understand you want to be a banker, or I understand that you want to go to business school. Hey, try this university, or hey, take this route, do a 2-year associate's degree and grow from there. So we kind of had to figure it out on our own. And it's just so powerful to realize at this age that what we were going through, we thought it was norm. I mean, I remember I used to just wake up and get dressed and walk around the neighborhood like, hey, this was an event, you know, this was our society. I didn't see the bigger world outside of just my neighborhood and my zip code. And finally, as I gotten older, I was always steered away from a particular area in St. Louis County. It's saying, hey, they don't want you there. Hey, you don't belong out there. And as we transitioned to that area, I began to see that it's totally different. I mean, you're not accepted in many areas, but it didn't stop me from taking a chance and really going and venturing out and finding that, hey, you can be accepted. And sometimes you have to break the norm. So this is a powerful discussion. I enjoy it. Forgive me for being quiet, but I love listening and studying and taking notes. So
I am.
You nailing it. I mean, look, shout out to Keith Jones. Sorry, I got it. Shout out to Derek's older brother, Keith Jones. He was my roommate at the University of Memphis. And when people talk about iron sharpening iron, he is now a banking exec, owns multiple properties. So proud of him. I know Derek is as well. Super proud of Derek. And that's the whole point. So you want to get around people. And this is what Luane was talking about. You want to get around people. Oh, and also the mall example, which is just mind blowing, Sharon, when you talk about that. You want to get around people that set your dreams ablaze. See, when you get around people who set your dreams ablaze, you think you got a big dream. You just want to work at the mall, maybe own a little shop, a little kiosk in the middle, and then somebody come and they like, I'm about to buy the mall. You like, what the? Set your, but you know what they did is setting your dream ablaze. That smoke goes up, and now you have a new dream. You have a new dream to aspire to. And so the way that I think about the innovation is, you know, Shirley Chisholm would always say, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. She was saying, bring your own folding chair, and getting that folding chair is so symbolic. Why? Because you all know, like I know, Black folks in local communities, somebody always got a folding chair. You might not have a nice folding chair at kids' ball games now that you sit in a little bubble in. Like last week, it was raining my kids' game. This woman had a whole bubble she was sitting in out of the game. I was like, this is some whole different stuff. And so bring your folding chair, right? That keeps you also connected to your community. That folding chair also allows you to move it around and let somebody else sit in your chair, because eventually you're going to get to sit at the table. But then you got to do what John Lewis said, right? John Lewis said, when you get at the table, you got to make sure you just not there getting served up. See, because sometimes they done already made the food, they done already prepared it, and they just serving you a meal that you might not want. You got to do what Bill Parcells talked about. You got to be able to go pick the groceries if they want you to cook, because that's how you end up running things. So when I think about this groupthink mentality, it's understandable and actually rational as to why people do it. The problem is we have to realize that there are different sectors of groupthink's mentalities. The mentality of groupthink in our local communities, particularly if they're Black and brown, low income, is very different from groupthink in more affluent areas where they have more resources, right? In terms of what that sustainability looks like. So we want to be able to access those different resources, which is why I know, probably similar to Chester being at SIU, is that part of thinking about this is I tell students to apply to as many diverse different types of universities as you can, geographically, size, because those networks you access, you will meet that person that says, I'm getting ready to go buy a mall. And you like, oh, shoot, now all of a sudden it's time for me to do something different. And then as you maneuver, and this will be my final point, unfortunately, sometimes, and I know LaWayne is probably getting ready to speak to this, that sometimes there are people who you leave behind for a second. I think about these things like a train. Look, I'm riding down the train track. I'm going as fast as I can. And there are some people, look, they want to get off at the last stop, or they think that I'm moving too fast. And the train is symbolic because I say, look, you about to have to park right here, but I'm going down the track. And if you keep moving, you can catch me at the next 3 stops, because I want you to be on this train with me, but I'm not going to stop my train. And along the way, I pick up new people on my train who I didn't know, who don't know the other people. All of them have helped formulate my train going down the track. But I know one thing that helps me to kind of break through that groupthink mentality and really try to be innovative.
Yeah. Yeah. Love all of that. The train, the seat, being able to move, because what I hear you saying is, do what needs to be done and trust yourself, but also make sure that you bring in others with you. Like, understand the assignment.
Yes.
Understand the process and the assignment. Yeah. Hey, Dr. Ray, guys, I just want you to know, thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Ray. We know you have a hard stop. When we come back, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Again, be in the room, just be in the room. Let's take this quick commercial break. And when we come back, let's go over some of the symptoms of groupthink. Again, we want to close with the symptoms of groupthink and anything we want to say to encourage. And when we end it out today, we're going to end with everybody with us. So Dr. Rashawn, thank you so much. Have a great Saturday. And lots of, I need a mic in my hand just so I can drop it.
All right.
Stay
Thanks,
blessed,
Dr.
guys.
Ray.
We'll be right back.
All right.
And we're back. Thank you so much. This is Knowledge and Nonsense. Today we're talking about groupthink and the dangers therein. And this has been a dynamic conversation. We're here with Derek Jones, Chester Nichols, Mr. Perkins. One of our guests just stepped off. Man, this conversation has been amazing because groupthink, although it is unity, it can be a dangerous unity, you know, like because it's not true unity. That's it. It's not true unity. True unity, you're aligned internally and externally. Groupthink internally, you know something is amiss, but you're afraid to say it, and it stifles creativity, it stifles individuality, different things like that. But before we go into these final, like the symptoms of groupthink, we have a question, and it says, good advice. You must have critical feedback to be successful. Can you give some advice to people who confuse negative comments with constructive criticism? And can we go, Derek, can you go? And then Chester, can you follow up with that? And then we'll go into the symptoms.
You can measure someone's intent with criticism based on body language, the words being used, and how it's being presented. So what I normally try to do is approach with offering just a level of comfort, figuring out a way to allow them to be comfortable before having a discussion, and offer some pluses and some and then bring in some of the things or the criticism, just to kind of keep them at a level to where they could not personalize what you're saying, if that makes sense.
So, man, you're crazy is not your opening statement.
Right.
All right. Correct. I get that. Let's bring some warmth to it.
Yeah.
Let's listen.
Yeah.
Let's foster an opportunity to have that moment, to give that.
Yes.
I love that. That's really good, Derek. Thank you so much. Chester, how about you? Is there some advice to people who confuse the negative comments with constructive criticism?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all got to go back to self-awareness, because you got to look within yourself. You know who you are, who you're not. You're not conforming with everyone else when you know within what's important to you. Also, you gotta understand, like, everybody can't go with you along the journey that you're trying to do, and their comments can't dictate how you live. So, you got to train your mind to see the good in everything. Especially the negative. Like, there are no losses, there are lessons. And so many times we gravitate towards the negative, and we can't even get to the positive, and it affects us health-wise. So
come on. Come on.
Yes.
And then, LaWayne, we still can't hear you, but then, like, you become Pigpen from the Charlie Brown comic back in the day. Like, when you come into the room, you're bringing that because you're so focused on negative, and that's your comfort level. That's what you're used to. You've almost become a subject matter expert in the negative outcomes, that you're not like, okay, you're going to build them all, man. Yeah, no. You're right. You become a carrier of that, which is detrimental. It's detrimental even to your own individual creativity. So let's talk about some of these symptoms before we get out of here. Oh my gosh, this has been such a great conversation. LaWayne's audio is out. Just LaWayne, that may be me on the production side, because I know you keep yours intact. So I'll get with the producers. So here's some of the symptoms. If you see these symptoms, please don't necessarily diagnose. Just because you have a cough doesn't mean you have COVID. These are simply symptoms of groupthink. And if you are a decision maker in your organization, or you have something that's called DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you're wanting to really see your organization begin to reflect different demographics and reflect a diverse organization, these are some things you can look at to see, truthfully, these are some measuring sticks. This is a ruler. It's just a measuring stick. So lack of diversity, these are symptoms there. Strong leadership, you would be like, how is that a symptom of groupthink? But you get around some strong leaders, and your team will get, you get around strong leaders who are not self-aware, and your team will get silent.
Yes.
That creativity and that innovation will just dwindle, and people will watch you walk into a fire, and they will watch the company dissolve. Google Swiss Air and see what happened to that company. Lack of information. And you guys, if any of these stick out to you, just jump in. You don't have to wait on me. I'm just reading it off. Lack of information. Wow. Oh, That's right. Lack of information.
Yeah.
Because certain information may challenge confirmation bias or some type of bias that you already have. So that lack of information helps that groupthink stay in place. Stress, complacency, uniformity, fear, and intimidation. These are symptoms of groupthink. And when you have these in a department, when you have them in an organization, when you have them in a community, what it does is it begins to stifle. So if you're working somewhere and they have all of these, you may be dealing with some groupthink if they have all of them. Do any of these symptoms stick out to you, gentlemen?
Absolutely, especially when you start talking about promoting fear. You go from having a fixed mindset. I mean, Dr. Carolyn Dweck, in one of her books, she talks about the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. And when you know the people that's leading, they're resistant to change, you're not going to grow. Your company's not going to grow. I would avoid that, because again, when you start promoting that, that's what you're going to see in the end result.
Wow.
And when you think about fear and intimidation, not only does it influence one member's decision, it can also affect the overall level of how that person performs in work as a whole. It can cause them to not participate, not be involved, do things outside of norm that may impact their job or whatever it is that they're trying to achieve in their personal life. So that level of intimidation, it can lead outside of just a normal group setting.
Yeah. Listen, man, with group thinking, you're having these experiences, or you yourself are experiencing these symptoms. Again, these are symptoms. It doesn't necessarily mean groupthink rules and govern at the place that you work or in the community where you live, but just be aware of the symptoms and be aware if you are in a position of leadership, if you are promoting these symptoms. If you have an organization or a company, or you're in a position of influence that you can have say so within an organization, a company, or community. Use it to minimize groupthink, to foster unity. But true unity is where you are aligned internally. I believe this will work. Yes, what I'm saying and what I believe is all aligned. That is unity. Groupthink is where I don't think so at all. But I don't, for lack of a better word, in layman's terms, I don't want the smoke, or I don't want the kickback. I don't want any negative repercussions. I don't want anything punitive to come my way. I don't want the stress of being ostracized or maybe not considered for new projects or new roles within my company. I don't want some label that I'm difficult to work with because I didn't go with what the team said. So there are things you don't want, and it keeps you silent. And for you being in a leadership position, if when your good people get silent, we see the memes on social media, but it's true. When your good people stop talking, those that have demonstrated competency, commitment, loyalty, allegiance, and really just want to see the whole team win, when they become silent, be aware. It may not be about them. It truly may be about the environment and the culture that has been fostered. Just for a show of hands, how many, just us, ourselves, I know I've experienced groupthink in an organization and in a community. Have you all experienced it?
Absolutely.
Did you exit?
Well, I was one who thought I could change the group, but eventually I had the exit stage left.
All right. I exited.
Yeah.
I did exit as well.
Yeah.
And so what I did prior to my exit, though, I did put things in place. Put things in place, because I realized too that humans are humans, and sometimes you just don't have the audience. Sometimes it has to come from another person.
Yes.
I had to ask myself, do I want to see the changes, or do I want credit for the changes? And to be honest, I wanted credit, but I wanted to see the changes more.
To see the change. Absolutely.
I wanted to see the changes more. And so I was like, okay, we're going to go with the changes. So you guys have anything you want to say before we bring this to a close? Because we could go on about this. I'm going to recap.
It's been great. It's been great. I enjoyed it.
All right. Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
For those of you watching, we've been talking about the dangers of groupthink today. This is our Saturday morning community edition. You guys know on Tuesdays, we're inside the department. On Saturdays, we're outside of the department, because also, although it feels like we live at work, we don't. we come home, and we come home to our communities. And we just want to talk about some of these things that can transfer and be inside of an organization or outside. Listen, cherry pickings is real. Listen, just because somebody considers it deviant because you lack resources, it doesn't mean it's that. You probably are an industry disruptor, and that's a good thing, leading to more technology, more innovation. Hold your form, keep working on those things, and please do what the young man, the gentleman said today, Dr. Ray, that's inside of the comments, when he gave some tips on how to really navigate that when you don't have said resources. Get around the right people who can speak into it. To grow, you got to go out of your comfort zone. To grow, you've got to go outside of your comfort zone. Guys, my name is Sharon Combs. LaWayne Perkins is my co-host. He's no longer with us right now, but he'll be back next round smiling.
He'll be back.
He'll be back. Everybody have a great, great day. And thank you so much, Chester Nichols, Division I coach. Thank you, Derek. We living sober.
Yes.
You have several houses now, right?
5 houses, 3 women's, 2 men's. Yes. And
yes,
we're growing.
Love it. Right there. Yes. Again, doing the thing, being innovative, and holding your form. Keep doing what you're doing. And I'm Sharon Combs, and we are signing off. Y'all have a great day.
You too. Thanks.
Thank you.